Yeah, if you want to start, Chair, please go ahead. We're online.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, which is being conducted remotely. This meeting is being streamed live so that the public can view and listen to the meeting. And in the interest of openness and transparency, I must also make you aware that it is being recorded and will be available to view on the Council's website. Firstly, I will deal with apologies for absence, after which I'll do a roll call of those members present. So apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor John Catternack, and we have Councillor Richard Musgrave in attendance as a substitute for Councillor Catternack today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So when I call your name, please unmute, state present, and then mute again. I am the Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee, Councillor John Macman, and I will be chairing this meeting today. Councillor Ellis.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Chilvers.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Welsh.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Mackay.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Topping.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Shaw-Wright. Councillor Shaw-Wright.
Sorry, John, it took a while to unmute. I'm here, Chair.
That's okay, thank you. Councillor Packham.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, members. We also have officers with us today. Martin Granger, who is Head of Planning.
Present, Chair.
Ruth Hardingham, Planning Development Manager.
Present, Chair.
Glenn Sharp, Solicitor.
Present, Chair.
Mandy Cooper, Principal Planning Officer.
Senior, but present, Chair.
Rebecca Leggett, Senior Planning Officer.
Present, Chair.
Gareth Stent, Principal Planning Officer.
Present, Chair.
Elizabeth Moore, Senior Planning Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I move to the agenda, I should remind everyone that this meeting is being streamed publicly and therefore is accessible to a wide audience. In accordance with usual practice of public meetings, I look forward to a respectable debate between members. To manage remote attendance, please ensure you remain on mute unless I invite you to speak. If you wish to speak, please indicate this by pressing the raise your hand button. During the meeting, you will be heard by the public and seen. I would also ask anyone who is registered to speak on an application to remain on mute when you are admitted to the meeting from the lobby and to not speak until you are invited to do so by myself. I shall now proceed to the rest of the formal business. Disclosures of interest. I'm now going to deal with disclosures of interest. I can confirm that I've had one email of representation from 3 residents at Birchwood Lodge, Market Wheaton Road. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Ellis, any declarations? You're on mute, Councillor Ellis.
Yes, that's all right. It's sticking as the button, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that I've had the same email as well as yourself.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chilvers.
Yes, I've had the same email, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Welsh.
Same emails, Chairman.
Councillor Mackay.
Same emails, Chairman.
Councillor Musgrave.
I haven't had that email, Chair, but possibly because I'm substituting late. I'm also getting quite a lot of items going to my spam filter, so it might be in there as well, but I haven't had that email.
Thank you. Councillor Topping.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've also received those emails. I would also like to make a representation as my capacity as a ward member on the 2 applications for Birchwood Lodge, after which I will take no further part in the meetings or the debate, and I will leave the meeting.
If I could just add to that, Chair, Councillor Topping and I have had a discussion regarding his participation in relation to those 2 items, and he is entitled to take part, albeit in a different capacity as a ward member, not as a member of the committee. So he can't participate in the debate or speak or vote, save for the representations that he can make in the usual way. So we're content that that's an appropriate way to proceed.
Thank you, Solicitor. Right, Councillor Shaw Wright.
Same as everybody else, Chair.
Councillor Packham.
Same emails as everyone else, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. I also make an announcement that an officer update note has been circulated. It can be viewed alongside the agenda on the council website. And if there are any late representations on any application, this will be summarised by the officer in their presentation. Just in case, because there is any difficulties with our computer systems or technology, and I live in a particularly poor broadband area, I would ask that if there's any reason that I get cut out of the meeting because of loss of broadband, that I would like to ask Councillor Musgrave if he would deputise if that should happen in an emergency.
Happy to do so, Chair.
Hopefully it won't happen, but thank you very much if it does. Right, we'll now move on to confirm the record, the correct record of the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 10th of March 2021. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Chair. It's proposing. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Chilvers.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councillor.
At the last meeting, when you discussed item 5.3, the new little cafe shop, I declared a non-pecuniary interest and left the meeting. I wish to let you know that today, when it comes up, I will do the same.
Okay, I think that was a declaration of interest.
Yeah, I tried to get it in, Mr. Chairman, but you were too quick for me.
Right, as chairman, I agree the minutes. Councillor Ellis.
Agreed.
Councillor Chilvers.
Agreed, Mr. Chairman.
Chilvers, are you happy to agree the minutes?
I am, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay, if you can get on.
Yeah, same again, Chairman. Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Musgrave.
I wasn't present, Chair, so I can't comment.
And just to let you know, you are allowed to agree the minutes or not agree the minutes, even if you're not at the meeting. But I'll take it that what you've just said remains the position. Councillor Topping.
I agree, Chairman.
Councillor Shaw Wright.
Agree.
Councillor Packham.
Agree, Chair.
So those minutes are agreed. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. We now move on to the main agenda. That's the planning applications received.
Chairman.
Before that, I will make, yes, Councillor Chilvers, was that?
No,
Councillor Welsh.
You didn't ask me about the minutes.
Right, sorry, apologise. Councillor Welsh, do you agree with the minutes?
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed.
And sorry, Chair, it's just Vicky from Democratic Services here. Have you turned your camera off by any chance? We just can't see a picture of you. I'm just checking that you haven't turned your camera off.
No, I haven't.
Okay, it must be to do with your connection then. No problem, Chair. Not a problem.
Maybe
Just checking.
Democratic Services don't like my face. Is that the reason?
No, it wasn't me. Not guilty.
I can see.
Okay. Apparently, my colleague can see you, but it must just be something to do with Teams. But don't worry, no problem. Not to worry.
It's definitely on.
That's fine. No worries. That's all right. I think some people can see you.
I've dealt with the items under Chairman's address as far as I'm concerned. So we move on to the main agenda items. And throughout the debate, members must use the raise your hand button to indicate their wish to speak. And you'll be given permission from the chair when appropriate. So the first item on the agenda is land adjacent to St Paul's Church, Main Street, Colton. And I invite the officer, Mandy Cooper, to present the report to the committee. And the presentation will be shared on screen, and any late representations received will be summarised by the planning officer during their presentation. So away you go, Mandy, it's over to you.
Can't hear her if she's talking, Chair.
Are you there, Mandy?
My apologies, I was still on mute. Right, we'll just start again. This application is for a single dwelling to the north side of Main Street in Colton, which is a secondary village and washed over by the Greenbelt. The development limits run through the application site with a very small portion of the dwelling and the full extent of the rear garden extending beyond. Now, as you can see on this plan, the development limits are very roughly drawn. The application site is just to the right of that arrow. Next slide, please. The principle of development is acceptable as it represents limited infilling in accordance with paragraph 145 of the MPF in relation to Greenbelt policy. There is an existing live permission which expires the end of May this year. Next slide, please. Which was recommended for refusal by a previous case officer and was overturned by members at Planning Committee in 2017. For this application, matters relating to residential amenity, highways, ecology, contamination and flood risk are all acceptable. Next slide, please. These are the elevations as proposed. The case officer considers that if we just go forward to the site plan. Thank you. As you can see, the position of the property is lengthways against the road, whereas the existing adjacent and localised development is traditionally with the frontage facing forward in widthways and set in spacious plots. If we could have the next slide, please. As you can see, the St Paul's Church is to the east. There is a traditional dwelling to the immediate west, Manor Farm. However, there is a barn conversion that runs not quite parallel, thank you, the barn, which some would argue is in the same position as the proposal. However, the majority of frontage development in the locality is widthways in spacious plots. And for this reason, can we just go down to the next slide, please, which shows the adjacent property to the west. This is Manor Farm. The next photograph shows the barn conversion beyond that. If we could go to the next photograph, this is the site looking north, and the next one, which is just another aspect view looking north. If we could go to the next photo, please. This is the boundary to the east, and then as you can see to the southeast is looking down toward the southeast is St Paul's Church. The next slide, please. Thank you. This is from within the site looking south. As you can see, there are dwellings on the south side of Main Street. Next slide. This is just the west elevation of St Paul's Church, and down, please. This is looking east along Main Street. The property on this site is almost opposite the site. And then if you go to the next slide, please. There we go. These are generally properties surrounding the site. Whilst all matters relating to, general amenity, etc., are satisfactory, officers consider that the positioning of the dwelling would be at odds with the spacious rural character of the village, to the point where it's cramped within its plot. As you can see, the frontage area, it's a very narrow part. There's actually a public right of way which would have to be diverted as well. I think also the elevations, particularly the east and west, the scattered arrangement of the proposed windows and the different scales, etc., are just totally out of keeping with the general character of the area. And for this reason, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mandy. I'll open the situation for any questions from members to officer.
Councillors Topping and Welsh have their hands up, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Topping, if you would like to speak now.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed there's correspondence received from the parish councils and also from adjoining residents. Were they generally in favour? What were the key sort of comments that were received from them? I think you're on mute, Mandy.
Thank you, Councillor Topping. Sorry about that. Yeah, there were a number of objections from neighbours. I think there were approximately 13. The parish council also objected to the scheme on the basis of pretty much the reasons for refusal, that it was totally out of keeping. I must add as well that initially the materials proposed, I forgot to add that, the materials proposed were proposed to be cladding, timber cladding, which was also one of the main reasons for refusal. However, I should add that the materials have now been amended to render for the external walls, but they were originally timber cladding. Sorry, anything else? Have I answered the question?
Sorry, thank you. Yes, just it was my next question was about materials actually, and it looks like a sort of white render. There are a number of properties within the village that are rendered or white rendered, but the majority of the vernacular is brick. Have you had an input into the choice of materials? Are you satisfied with the choice of materials that are proposed?
Yes, I mean, if we go back to the photographs, if that's possible, there is a property to the southwest which is rendered with a dark grey tile, which is a similar sort of arrangement. It's that slide number 18, as you can see, which is a similar sort of material to what is proposed. Yes, I have had input, and I said, at least it would be more sort of, it would fit in better in that respect. However, I just feel that the window arrangement is just out of keeping. But yes, I have had input in that.
Thank you, Mandy. And then just my final question. Whilst I note your points about the orientation of dwellings within the village being front facing and not gable end, as it were, as proposed, a lot of the agricultural buildings, brick built with sort of pantile roofs within the village, are actually orientated in the fashion set out as proposed. And again, just your view on that, please.
I would agree with that, but at the end of the day, those buildings are conversions. They are existing buildings that form part of the local vernacular anyway. This is a proposed new building, which I just consider the fact that it's so cramped. The window arrangement in particular is just out of keeping. However, yes, I acknowledge that, but I would refute that, you know, those buildings are existing buildings that have been converted or exist, you know, still in existing use for agricultural use.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the public right of way, if it's diverted, whose land is it going on to? And has a diversion order been applied for already?
As far as I'm aware, the diversion order hasn't been applied for as yet. But that would go directly to the county council, not to us, as far as I'm aware. Now, I may be incorrect on that, and if I am, I apologise. But as far as I know, it would go directly to the public rights of way people for that diversion order. Now, in terms of the land, if we could just go back to the location plan, please, on the slides. Right, if we just go back up to the actual location plan. It is shown within the red line, so it looks as though it's within the applicant's ownership. So,
right, thank you. You are correct. It would go to North Yorkshire for diversion.
Thank you.
Councillor Peckham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a couple of questions. The first one is in relation to this proposal and the one that was considered in 2017, which incidentally was my second planning committee. You'll all be excited to hear. How similar are these two? Proposals? Or are they identical?
They're not identical, no. I think this one is slightly larger because the previous approval didn't actually extend beyond the development limit. This is slightly longer, possibly slightly wider, but it's more the window arrangement. The window arrangement on the extant permission or live permission is very different in terms of the window arrangement on the approval was more sort of formal, and it didn't have that fragmented, scattered arrangement, you know, many different sized windows in different positions, etc. It was very different, but the overall form is very similar.
Okay. My second question was, I think this one expires. This permission, the current permission expires in May, which is obviously, as it stands, a material consideration. If we were considering this application after that had expired, what level of material consideration would you consider there to be, given that there would have been previously a planning permission on this site? How much weight would you have given that? Sorry,
so Councillor Packham, you're saying if the existing
this has got an extant planning permission on.
Yes.
So we've obviously given weight to that as a material consideration, because it's quite a considerable material consideration in terms of weight, I would suggest. If we were beyond May and that has expired, would you or would you not agree that the fact that it had planning permission on this site, which had merely expired, would still be a material consideration?
Yes.
And if so, what sort of weight would you give it?
I would give it a lot of weight, but I would still ask for a different arrangement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Right, Chairman. I went for a look at the site yesterday. I don't know who put the development line in, but all of a sudden he did a bit of a zigzag, to be quite honest, because the back plots, which would be in line with the barn, would have been ideal. You could have had a house with housing being cramped in. This one's very cramped site, and when you take into consideration there is a public footpath that, if you say you restored it to 1 metre wide, you've reduced the usage at the front even more. I'd right good look at the site and saw the ponds behind. They've got all sorts of creatures in it. They're protected, but the site's exceedingly tight. But as pointed out by Councillor Packham, it's had a previous permission. To be quite honest, it would be worth a site visit for some of the members just to have a look and put it into context. I realise it would be running the opposite way to the majority of the houses on the street, which would be a little bit odd. But then again, it's an infill site at the end of the day, and the paddock at the back could make a rather nice garden or whatever, preferably a housing site. But when is the new development line going to be looked at again? Is it the distant future?
Well, I think the answer to that, Councillor Mackay, would be the fact that the local plan is progressing, but it's going to be a considerable length of time before that goes through its submission stage and examination in public. So you have to rely on the current local plan information.
Yeah. Well, on that basis, and I assume the local members looked at these sites, I would like a site visit, Chairman, even though I've seen it, and I think other members could perhaps appreciate what we're trying to sort out eventually, because if you'd had a previous consent on it, you'd be rather alarmed at the moment the way we're going, making up our minds. Obviously, they've got the site set on having a house. It's you've got a site that's actually got permission, but you know, what the hell do you put there? You know. I'd go for a site visit, Chairman, if members are willing to have a look at it.
Well, I make the point that we're still under COVID restrictions, and the fact that the current consent on this property, the extant planning
runs out
at the end of May. So time is of the essence.
Exactly. But
if you want to propose a site visit, we would have to take a view. Is there a seconder for a site visit?
Anyone? No? No? All right. There's only an idea.
So I'll move on to Councillor Musgrave.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. We're still in the question stage at the moment of the consideration, aren't we? So I just wanted to make a point about the extant planning permission, which is that if it was acceptable to the owner, they could get on and deliver it. They don't have to wait. They're applying for something else, so we have to consider what they're applying for on its own merits. The site is within the development limits of the village, so the principle is acceptable. We're discussing what actually goes on there, and I know the site very, very well. And my ward colleague, Councillor Ellis, is here as well. It is a very narrow site, as I'll expand on in the debate stage.
I thought, from the point of view of questions, we'd cleared all the questions earlier. Have we not?
I think Councillor Topping, did you wish to ask another question?
Yes, please, Vicky.
Yeah, Chair, there's just so Councillor Topping and Councillor Mackay, did you have another question, or did you? No, he just needs to put his hand out. It's just Councillor Topping then, Chair.
Yeah, I thought Councillor Topping had probably forgot to take his hand out. Councillor Topping.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of other questions that came to mind during the additional responses. In terms of the issue, the primary issue, which seems to be sort of the design of the property in terms of the window locations, etc., was the applicant not willing to discuss changes through the planning process? That was my first question. Just on mute, Mandy.
Sorry, I keep doing that. We did ask for some changes. And I mean, the reason why the applicant submitted the application was because there were so many changes that they wanted to the existing permission, hence why they submitted this one, which didn't warrant a minor amendment. So we did ask for changes, also in regards to which is not immaterial, I think it's quite important. We'd asked for the fencing on the east elevation to be removed and the hedge retained, but and I did think that the applicant was going to come back with some changes, but because they knew that we were looking to recommend it for refusal, they haven't changed anything. So does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yes, it does. Yeah. And then the question I pose every month is the hedgerow at the front is to be removed. Is that correct? So I think that's what you just said, isn't it? It wasn't clear from the plans.
Sorry. Yes. Part of the hedgerow, obviously, to make way for the access, is going to be removed. As you can see, if you look at the drawings, it looks like part of the hedge is going to be retained, but there's a fence going directly through it. In addition to the eastern side that runs sort of adjacent to the west elevation of the church. Initially, I thought that hedge was going to be retained, but it looks like they're taking it out, putting a fence there, and then replanting a hedge on, with the fence running central. I cannot understand why the hedge would be removed in the first place, because it's quite a mature hedge. It's not particularly high, but it's very lush, and I cannot understand why that would be removed. And that was one of the alterations that we'd asked for.
No, that was how I read the plan. It looked like the hedgerow to the north was to be retained, and the hedgerow to the side and to the frontage was going to be removed, but it wasn't clear. And it doesn't allow for any further additional planting as well, because the hard standing goes right up to the street frontage. So there's also there's trees that will be affected by the development, and I couldn't see on the planning portal a tree survey to understand what the impact of those will be. I believe they're quite small trees, but still there would be an impact, and there would be pruning works required to accommodate the development to the northeast of the development. So has a tree survey been undertaken, and if not, what works are proposed to mitigate or to protect the trees?
To be fair, Councillor Topping, those trees that run to the top end of the site, east facing, the very top end, but east facing, they wouldn't actually be affected by the development per se, because of where the dwelling is positioned. However, if this proposal were to be approved against officer recommendation, then we would require more detailed plans or ensure that those trees would be protected. However, we're looking at it on the basis of refusal. Yes, there is one there.
Yeah, because sort of from the plans, it looks like it, and from the street view as well, it looks like it does actually encroach into the site. So it would require some works to accommodate development. So just wanted clarification. Thank you.
No, that's fine. And if it were approved, then we would obviously look to ensure that a full tree survey was done and means of protection for those trees. Sorry, yes.
So are there any other questions to the officer? I think we've dealt with the questions. I've opened the meeting to debate. If anybody else wants to speak on the debate issues, would they please raise their hand? Councillor Musgrave.
Thanks, Chair. As I mentioned earlier, I am one of the ward councillors for Colt, and so I know the village very well. I know this site very well as well. I think Mandy's report summarises the situation and application very well indeed. Actually, it's a very thin, narrow plot in a village which is mainly a linear village with houses facing onto the road. Those that aren't are principally farmsteads that have been redeveloped, which give us slightly different characteristics to the village. But of the houses that have actually been built, the vast majority, if not all, face onto the road, and I don't think I can think of another one that's gable end onto the road. This would stand at odds with the rest of the village, and be out of character for the appearance of the village. In particular, it would impact the setting of St Paul's Church next door. So I think Mandy's summary is the correct one, and the recommendation for refusal is one that I will support.
Thank you for that, Councillor Musgrave. Councillor Topping, you had your hand up again.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would agree with what Richard said. Really, it's disappointing because I don't have an issue particularly with the site and location. The fact that it's already got permission on site. I think the gable end onto the street frontage, again, I don't particularly have an issue with that, other than the fact that it's a rendered finish, and therefore it would sort of appear quite incongruous within the streetscape. And I think the removal of the boundary hedgerow as well would have an urbanising effect and just compound that sort of linear form that they're proposing. So I would agree with summary from Richard, and I would support the refusal on the basis of the points that Mandy has very well set out.
Thank you for that. Any other speakers? Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I do have some concerns about this. I have to say about the refusal recommendation. I understand that this proposal shows a house gable end on, but so did the approval, which already exists. And as Mandy has already confirmed, even if the approval were to expire, it would still, the fact that we had given permission for that format of development on this site would still be a material consideration to any inspector. I think there might be an argument potentially in terms of the fenestration that Mandy's put forward, and there might be and I think any argument that you were going to put forward that and other issues justified refusal would have to very specifically refer to the differences between this and what we'd already approved. Because otherwise, as an inspector, I'd say, well, what's the difference? So I do have certain concerns about it. On balance, I'm prepared to support the refusal, but I think we need to be cautious. And I think we need to bear in mind that there is a potential that we'll lose it if it goes to appeal.
Thank you for that. Anybody else wanting to speak? Councillor Packham, you still got your hand up? Right, so I return it to members. The officer's recommendation is for refusal. Do we have a proposer for that recommendation? Councillor Musgrave is proposing refusal. Is there a seconder for refusal in accordance with the officer's recommendation? Councillor Topping is seconding the recommendation for refusal as proposed by the officer. Nobody wants to propose opposite to that, I take it. So it's a straight vote on the officer's recommendation of refusal. I will vote in favour of refusal. I need my list now. Councillor Chilvers,
Refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mackay,
Refusal subject to the proposal that you put to the officer to make this cast iron, Chairman.
Councillor Topping,
Refusal, Chairman.
Councillor Packham,
Refuse, Chair.
Councillor Shaw-Wright,
Refuse, Chair.
Councillor Welsh,
Refusal, Chair.
is there anybody?
Councillor Richard
Okay.
Musgrave.
Councillor
Yeah.
Musgrave,
Yeah, I'm refuse as well, Chair.
refuse it, yeah. And Councillor Topping,
And Councillor Ellis, Chair.
Councillor Topping, can you just confirm refusal?
Yes, refuse, Chair.
Councillor Ellis,
Refuse, Chair.
that's unanimously refused in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you for that, everybody. We now move on to the next application, which is the Haven, White Street, Selby. And the presenting officer is, would you believe it, Mandy again? So over to you, Mandy.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just waiting for the slides to come up. And they are up. Thank you, Chair. This application proposes the demolition of an existing bungalow and the construction of 5 two-bedroom and 2 one-bedroom dwellings for older persons. The application site is situated within the development limits of Selby and currently comprises a 1950s bungalow, which is set almost centrally within a large plot of some 0.1 hectare. The site is surrounded to all sides by existing residential development and would be accessed from the south off White Street as per the existing access arrangement. The application proposes 4 dwellings to the northwest boundary, well, not to the north, set in from the northwest boundary, sorry, and 3 dwellings facing the northeast. There's a central parking arrangement. When I say central, it starts on the southwest boundary with 3 parking spaces facing northwest and another 5 facing northeast, with turning area adjoining that boundary, the southwest boundary, sorry. The application has been amended slightly to one of the parking spaces has been removed in order to allow for turning within sight, so that turning isn't going to go outside of the site. The properties are very simplistic in form, but relatively modern, with 1 or 2 bedrooms in the roof space. To the frontages, there is a single dormer. And as I say, the properties are modern in their appearance, but with some traditional elements such as the soldier courses. The dormer's sort of set centrally, but it's stepped down so that the bottom is sat on top of the eaves. There's also a central area of external landscaping, which is separate from the quite generous gardens for this age group. It's an open area for the residents to congregate. It comprises of some plants, some low-level planting, 1 or 2 trees, and 1 or 2 benches as well. There have been no objections in terms of residential neighbours. We have had an objection from the landscape officer, which case officer does not agree with, because it's quite a small site. I think there's limited space, and given the age of the proposed residents, I think that the site offers, one, a good level of personal amenity space, and two, a good level of shared outdoor amenity space. And for that reason, case officer is recommending approval subject to conditions. There have been additional conditions following Chairman's briefing, which are in the officer update notes, relating to a landscaping scheme, bin storage, and broadband, and a lighting scheme, which was mentioned yesterday. As you can see from the slides, this is the existing access going off from White Street to the southwest. These are properties. This is a bungalow adjoining on slide 31. Slide 32 on the right side just shows the existing site. If we could go on to slide 33, please. It just gives you a general view of what the site is like at the moment. There is quite a large level of hard standing sort of adjoining the bungalow area, the access, and then other areas of hard standing. If we could go on to the next slide, please. This is looking to the southeast, to the adjacent properties, number 30 and 28 White Street. This is the front elevation of the existing bungalow. If we could go down, that's the existing parking areas and garage. To the southeast elevation, which you can see on the right of this photo here, there's like an existing Leylandii sort of ornamental hedge, which is proposed to be removed. And as I say, this has been recommended for approval. There have been objections from one of the councillors. The reason why it's been brought to committee on the basis of highway concerns. I think also the fact that the councillor felt that it was slightly cramped. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Any questions to the officer from members? Councillor Topping.
Thank you, Chairman. It was the same question as I posed in the last application, actually, about the tree survey. Just looking at the street view again, and the area of photography, there are a number of very large trees to the north of the site, some of which are shown on the site plan. One adjacent to plot 1, I think, would have to be sort of severely cut back to accommodate that plot. And I would have thought would lead to future pressure to remove those trees. So has a tree survey been undertaken, and how, therefore, can you assess the impact on those trees?
No, a tree survey hasn't been undertaken, and those trees are actually, as you can see, outside the site. However, as you've rightly pointed out, part of the canopies do overhang very slightly. Now, given that the area immediately adjoining would be given over to, would be laid to lawn and therefore not form part of the development, I know it's a very, very loose rule of thumb, but generally the root area would not extend much beyond the canopy. I think I have mentioned that we would require tree protection, and one of the conditions actually covers that. I think it's condition 4 off the top of my head in regards to construction management plan, where it does refer to tree protection. Let me just double check, just bear with me. I'm sure it's condition 4, sorry, condition 3, where we've added a point to condition 3, which requests, details of the measures to be taken for the protection of trees. Now, if that involves a tree survey, well, one will be required. However, the landscaping officer did not raise that so much as an issue. It was more that he felt that there was a lack of landscaping on the site. He felt that the landscaping within the site didn't go far enough. There were no comments made in relation to those existing trees. And I take on board your point, Councillor. However, I think that given that those trees are set well away from the northwest boundary, there would be a level of protection in terms of storage of tools, etc. And, you know, no vehicles or any storage on that area, which is proposed for lawn. However, I think beyond that, they are outside the site with the trunks well away from that boundary. They're set back by approximately 5 to 6 metres.
Councillor Shaw Wright.
Yes, Chair. You said it's for older people. How are you going to monitor it and enforce it? What's going to stop them selling them to anybody that they feel like? You're on mute,
Andy.
Yeah, I just realised, I just saw. Sorry about that. There would be a condition included which would ensure that the residents were restricted to over the age of 60, with their partners where applicable, no younger than 55. And as I understand it, the site will be sold to a specialist operative in terms of these type of dwellings. So there would be a condition. Obviously, it would be like any other condition. If that condition's breached, then action would have to be taken. And any future residents would need to be made aware of those conditions as per the developer, by the developer, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. Even with losing one of the car parking spaces to allow the turning, would not the position of the bins when they're put out on the bin day impair on the ability of the cars to turn round?
I've just been told I'm on mute again, sorry. We will get there. As you can see, there is an area to the southeast of the site, just northeast of the access, you know, which could be used for bin collection. However, there is a condition which requires the bin management or the bin arrangement to be agreed by ourselves. So I'm sure that in terms of, you know, everyday use, the bins could be kept within the confines of each plot. However, yes, bins would need to be congregated, but I cannot see, if they're kept off the parking area, how that would impact on the turning of the vehicles. And given that there's a relative degree of space there available, I would hope that common sense prevails.
More faith in common sense than me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members? I don't see any hands up. Right, there are no public speakers, so I open this to debate by members. The recommendation is grant permission subject to conditions which are both in the main document and in the update. So open to debate. I don't see any hands up. Sorry, Councillor Topping.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, I thank Mandy for clarifying the issue on the trees, but I do, again, it comes up time and time again on numerous different sites. It is incredibly important in terms of the amenity, the residential amenity, the quality of the environment, that we have a full understanding of existing trees on site, because the roots for some of the trees that I'm looking at will extend right up to the face of the plots on some occasions. So I'm pleased that there is provision in place to protect those trees, but I do think it's really important that as a council we understand the sort of arboricultural aspects of development, so that we can put robust measures in place and prevent sort of future pressure from residents to remove those trees. So it is a cramped site, and because of that, I think there will be future pressure to remove them. The largest tree on site near plot 1 is about 15 metres at the moment. It looks like it's got potential to go much higher than that and broader. So it was just a general point. I think, given it's a cramped site, I think it's important to sort of understand those off-site features that will affect the development. So just a general point, and I know that the conditions are in place with the camp to protect them, but without understanding exactly what you're protecting, it's difficult to enforce that. Thank you.
So is the officer content with that comment?
I mean, it has a good point. I think in terms of pressure to remove those trees, given that they're outside the site, that would be rather difficult. But if you genuinely feel that a tree survey would be of benefit, I think we could add a condition that would, request that, I think, in all fairness.
I think it can be controlled, as you said, through the KEMP and through the protection measures. But my point is, I suppose we don't know exactly what we're protecting.
I understand what you're saying.
I think as long as it's robust and it's enforceable, and I do think whether they're on site or off site, this is where councils in future come under a lot of pressure to have trees removed. So I think this comes back to the spatial arrangements of the dwellings and whether it is too cramped in relation to the context of the site. So as long as that's in place, then and it's enforced and it's carried through the process, then that's fine.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. Having known this site for many more decades than I care to remember, to be honest, the reason that I was asking about the bins was the little snicket kind of thing that goes at the back of side of Wide Street. It doesn't really get used by cars because it's that narrow. You'd have to be very brave to take a car down it. It's generally pedestrians and cyclists that use it. It does get used. That's why I think it's very important for cars to be able to turn around out there. I would like to see maybe a fence separating the bin areas so there could be no reason whatsoever for cars not turning there.
Well, I think we've got a clear steer from the highways that they're happy with the proposals and on highway safety grounds. Yeah. So whilst I understand what you're saying, I think that's already been dealt with in the report as far as it can be.
Can I just add, Councillor, there were tracking plans submitted at the request of the highway officer to ensure that, the turning arrangements could be achieved, were achievable.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other comments in the debate? So the officer's recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. I've lost my screen, Mandy. Sorry, Victoria.
Sorry, mine was flickering on and off as well, but I'm back.
Right.
Which one have you
So,
lost, Chair?
The
Is it- or
officer's
is it back?
the officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions. I will propose and move that recommendation. Is there a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll second it. Councillor Chilvers.
Right, so is there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll take the vote now on the recommendation by officers to
I think
approve
Councillor
this
Ellis. Oh,
application.
sorry, Councillor Ellis did have his hand up, but he's just put it down now, I think.
Okay, well, I did ask if there was any more. I didn't see any more. So I'm going to proceed to take the vote. I'm in favour of this application, subject to the conditions as recommended by the officer. Councillor Mackay.
In favour, Chairman.
Councillor Musgrave.
For, Chair.
Councillor Chilvers. Councillor Chilvers.
For, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Packham.
For, Chair.
Councillor Steve Shaw Wright.
For, Chair.
Councillor Topping.
For, Chair, subject to conditions.
Councillor Ellis.
For, Chair, subject to conditions.
Have I got everybody there? Victoria.
Is there Councillor Welsh? Is there? You need Councillor Welsh as well.
Councillor Welsh.
For, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That's unanimously carried. Approved as recommended by the officer, subject to conditions. Thank you very much indeed. We're now going to move on to the new little coffee shop, 8 Brook Street, Selby, and the presenting officer is Gareth Stanton. On to you, Gareth.
Thanks, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Chilvers, I'm going to leave the meeting, Mr. Chairman, while this is being debated. If you would call me back in later, I would like that, sir.
Right, okay, Councillor Chilvers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So this application is for the continued use of the ground and first floor of the existing cafe. It's actually a variation of the opening hours as the essential part we're considering today. And the site is known as the new little coffee shop, 8 Brook Street, Selby. So the application was obviously previously considered on the 10th of March, heavily debated in terms of its residential impact on the adjoining residential properties. Members of the planning committee deferred the application because there was some outstanding information from the environmental health officer. These were basically the amplified music details and the ventilation and extraction arrangements. So obviously following the deferment last time, members have now been provided with that information through the committee report and in the pre-committee officer update note. The main concern was obviously the lack of the full response from the environmental health officer. The applicant has since confirmed that in terms of the music, that is via something called an Echo Dot, which is a small device played at a low level in the premises. The concern was obviously live music in the premises previously. This has satisfied the environmental health officer, and I'll show you what I mean in terms of the actual device itself when we look at the photographs shortly. And then secondly, in terms of the extraction and ventilation system, the concern was that obviously if the fan and ventilation system is running after hours, that might cause a nuisance to adjoining residential properties. The applicant has provided the environmental health officer with the actual type and spec of the extraction system. It's known as the Jetline 100. It has a 55 decibel noise output. and then it's demonstrated where the ducting and outlet goes in terms of its position in relation to neighbouring properties. This has been assessed by the environmental health officer, and only today has provided the position of him being satisfied with that arrangement. In the officer update notes, there is an additional condition which more or less regulates that any noise from that system over and above background noise levels is controllable. So I'll take you through. We've got 2 requests to speak, so I'll not dwell on the elements of support for the scheme or the objections, because obviously both speakers will demonstrate that in their representations. The environmental health response, as I said, has been circulated in the officer update notes, and essentially that is to say that there's been no noise survey obviously conducted on this particular application, so it's an assessment by the environmental health officer in terms of the type of extraction system, its positioning and where the outlets are, and the conclusion is that he doesn't feel that it's going to represent a significant obstacle to the grant of this particular planning permission. More critically, there's been no representation specifically mentioned about the actual ventilation system, so that there is a suggested condition should members support this scheme. And then there is a small report correction. The report previously referred to the premises being surrounded by 3 residential properties, when in fact it's 5 immediate. There was a series of flats at number 6A and 6B, 2 flats at 8A and 8B, and obviously a residential dwelling adjacent. So I'll just quickly take you through the photographs just so the members which weren't here last time can have a feel for the site. So this is the property in question, just on the outskirts of the town centre, on a busy main road running into the town centre. So you've got residential property to the left. You've got the cafe use is the majority of the ground floor and part of the first floor, with a flat to the rear. And you've got a vacant commercial property to the right, with residential at first floor and to the side. In terms of its geographical location, you can see the town centre's over here. It's on a row of predominantly residential properties on this side. There is other commercial premises to the south and opposite, and it's just on the fringe of the commercial area of the town centre. In terms of its history, there was an application in 2013 to actually change the ground floor of the shop to the cafe, so we're not reconsidering the cafe use because that's established. And in 2015, there was a further permission to change part of the first floor to expand into the first floor of the premises as a cafe. Both of those were separate planning permissions and regulated by different hours of operation. So in terms of the current hours, which is the most critical thing we're considering today, ground floor Monday to Saturday 9 while 5, pretty standard for a cafe, closed on Sundays. And at first floor, Monday to Saturdays, 11 while 3, closed on Sundays, excluding bank holidays. So what we are proposing in this permission is Sunday opening at 11 AM till 4 PM on both floors. So that's in addition. And then the late night opening for the theme nights, which is Fridays or Saturdays from 5 PM till 10 PM in the evening. This is on the basis of a 12-month temporary consent with no more than 1 event per calendar month. So essentially members are looking at a temporary consent to allow the occupier to operate on 12 occasions between 5 and 10 PM over the course of the next year, and obviously COVID allows for the reopening. The environmental health response, that's all documented in the committee report, and we've already touched upon it in the pre-committee notes. The main issues, obviously, it was requested to committee by Councillor Chilvers. We've got speakers for and against. It's in the settlement boundary of the town, well, the main urban area of Selby. We established previously that We didn't think it had any heritage impacts on the conservation area. The main issue is really the impact on residential amenity. So I'll just give you a feel. The policy context is in the committee report in terms of how it should be assessed. So it's the striking the balance between protecting the residential amenity of the adjacent occupiers, of which obviously there's several, obviously weighed against the ability and the need for the business to expand. Obviously the applicant will highlight those attributes in his presentation. So in terms of the wider context, you can see this is the property in question. That's the main road into Selby. You've got the residential property to the left. And that gives you a very similar image. You've got residential properties then further to the town centre. And since the original permission was granted in 2013, there has been another estate in here. And that's it, standing opposite the site. And then just in terms of that music system, which members wanted to know before, this is the device in question. So it's a small amplified speaker. In terms of the extraction system, obviously for those people not familiar with this type of thing, this is just the spec in terms of its power, its output, noise generated, which has been assessed by environmental health officer. In terms of the actual layout, this is a plan from the 2015 application. I think one of the difficulties we've had with this particular scheme is there's been no layout plans, so it's been difficult to gauge which parts are used for what and where the flats operate. So essentially, this is the pavement, the road frontage, and the 2015, which allowed the first floor to be used, was this area in yellow. So you come up the stairs, and obviously this is the extra capacity for the restaurant, the cafe, and then the latter part of the building is the flat 8A, which is an apartment flat at first floor. So that gives you a feel in terms of the main body of the building, and then the two-storey gable coming off the back. And then similarly, in 2013, the plans were drawn by the applicant at that time. These are two tiles stitched together really, and this shows the full extent of the building. So you've got the main pavement, you've got the main part of the cafe and dining area, you've got toilets midway through the building, and then the cooking, storage and extraction at the back of the premises. And then finally, this is the ventilation system, the extraction system, which has been installed. And you can see the ducting running through the premises. And then this is the outlet, which is on the south elevation of the property facing number 10. So recommendation, Chair, is still to approve. Environmental Health Officer has been satisfied with the additional information provided. So happy to answer any questions. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. So inviting questions for the officer. Councillor Shaw, right?
Yeah, I'm generally okay with the application. My concern is about the sound from the Echo Dot. Having grandchildren who live with me, who have got one in each room, all they have to do is tell it to go louder, and it does. How would they stop a patron of the place saying, turn it up? You know, I'd prefer a different type of sound system where they were in control of it rather than anybody who could just shout at it. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I think obviously the applicant has suggested that they have it on level 4 and 5. However, like you said, they technically it'd be very difficult to control, I would suggest. So that music obviously could go up and it could go down. You know, it may not be on for every minute of the day that particular cafe is open. So yes, I think obviously during normal operating hours, I think with the background noise and the traffic and the customers, I think the applicant has said it's background for ambience purposes. Really, it's not the type of venue where you'd have live music. But I suppose we could condition. It'd be very difficult to probably word a condition that the echo dot has to remain on levels 4 and 5. I think obviously environmental health have their own powers and legislation to regulate that outside the planning system, really, if that music became a noise nuisance. So I think it's part of goodwill of the operator, and obviously then if it does become a problem, refer to environmental health legislation on that one.
Councillor Welsh?
I could help with answering Steve's question, or would you like me to wait till the debate stage?
I think you should wait till the debate stage and only raise it if it's necessary.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Just for clarification, I'm not sure I followed this perfectly, but in terms of conditions, are you suggesting that you will include the condition that is on page 4 of the officer update from the environmental health officer?
Yes, obviously that condition needs a reason. It's just been quickly devised this morning, and it may need making slightly more robust, I would suggest, in terms of its actual wording. Let me just revert back to the actual wording of it. So it suggests the cumulative level of sound associated with the proposed development when determined externally under free field conditions shall not exceed representative background sound levels at the nearby sensitive receptor. All noise measurements, predictions, assessments to be made to determine compliance shall be made in accordance with BS standard. So obviously it is without a reason, which it needs. I suppose the issue here is we don't know what those background levels are because there's been no noise assessment done with this application. I think the mainstay of the concern was originally obviously the residential impact. There's no information on, what noise came from the premises. So, to answer your question, yes, that condition obviously would need imposing. It might need slightly rewording, I would suggest.
Thanks.
Any further questions for the officer? Seeing none. Okay. We have 2 public speakers for this application. The first speaker is Amy Brooks, who's an objector.
Yep, Amy's she is in the meeting, Chair, so if you're happy for her to start.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Amy. You've got 5 minutes in which to present to the committee. So it's with you now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Mr. David Haynes as occupiers of residential properties directly adjacent to the Little Coffee House. And again, we wish to strongly object to the proposed change of opening hours. This application has come back to committee because members requested that stronger controls were investigated to mitigate against problems with noise. Strong controls already exist. Conditions were put in place right from the start of the change of use from retail to cafe, specifically to guard against issues with noise and to protect our residential amenity by restricting the opening hours of the premises. Nothing has changed. I am at a bit of a loss as to how the application has got to this point when there's been no changes to the policies that have led to the conditions on the opening hours being put in place. There have been 3 owners of the cafe since it opened, and each one has wanted something more. When the premises first opened, there was no desire from the owners at that time to operate anything other than daytime hours, Monday to Saturday on the ground floor. Then that wasn't enough, and the first floor was converted. And again, conditions were put in place to restrict the opening of hours because of concerns around noise. And then that wasn't enough, and an alcohol licence was granted. And then that wasn't enough, and a pavement licence has been granted. Neither of those licences match the existing permitted hours. But now that isn't enough either, and the applicant's asking to operate every Sunday and on evenings. I'm sure the applicant will confirm they're happy to only operate one night a month and for restricted opening on a Sunday, but the history of the site shows that it's highly likely at some point in the future Someone will decide once again that this isn't enough. What would they want next year or the year after? What would the next owner want? Because as you know, conditions sit with the premise, not with the owner. At what point do members decide that enough is enough? This isn't just about this application on this day. The officer's report on change of use for the first floor stated, one of the core principles of the NPPF is always to seek to ensure a good standard of amenity for all existing and future occupants of land and buildings is achieved. So where's the protection for us as residents and neighbours if conditions are constantly pushed and changed? Who's looking after our rights? If the additional hours are granted, it sends out a clear message that planning conditions don't matter and can simply be rewritten if you decide that what you have isn't enough, regardless of the impact this might have on neighbouring properties. So what's the point of having conditions if they can be so easily overturned? The officer report states it's inevitable that visitors coming to the premises and leaving will cause some disturbance. Also, when taking smoking breaks, will congregate outside the premises near the windows of the private residential properties adjacent. Similarly, there may be some noise transmission between party walls. All of this has the potential to cause harm. On a number of occasions, the Environmental Health Officers also raised concerns about the potential for unacceptable noise impact from raised voices, amongst other things. The additional conditions only relate to music and plant or equipment, and these have never been an issue. My complaint has always been in relation to noise from customers, from raised voices and strong smokers congregating on my property. There are no controls proposed in relation to this type of noise. I'm sure the applicant will assure you that their customers are polite and well-mannered, but I've never sat in a cafe or restaurant where all the customers sit in silence, whether in one other person or in a group. The party walls are very thin, and with no soundproofing, I regularly hear noise from customers during the day. On a quiet Sunday and evening, this noise amplifies and causes even more of a disturbance than it does during a normal day when there's other background noise. The applicant confirmed last time that they'd been holding group bookings such as baby showers and theme nights out of their permitted opening hours. These group bookings created even higher levels of noise and have the potential to continue to do so, particularly when you take into account the alcohol and pavement licences that are also now in place. Where's the respite for neighbours if the cafe is permitted to open every day? At the previous committee, members asked how a temporary consent would be monitored, and officers confirmed it would be difficult to enforce and the onus would be on neighbours to report disturbances. There's nothing in this new report to suggest there would be any other way of monitoring the conditions. It's incredibly difficult for me to sit here again today objecting to my neighbours. For the council to expect me in effect to keep tabs on the applicant for the next 12 months is completely inappropriate and only further antagonises what's already a very stressful situation. Members asked for two things last time: additional controls to prevent noise and details of monitoring. I don't believe either of those requests have been satisfied here. There are no controls recommended that would deal with noise from customers and raised voices. The monitoring relies solely on myself or my neighbour making further complaints. If the conditions that you've requested be imposed have not been satisfactorily resolved, I would ask what would be the reason for approval today. For this reason, and to protect the residential amenity now and in the future, I urge members once again to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. If you could now leave the meeting, you can continue to watch on YouTube if you wish. Thank you.
There is due to be one more speaker, Chair, but
Yep.
they haven't joined the meeting yet. So I do have a copy of of their representation. I can read that out on their behalf if you're content with that approach.
Yes, I'm certainly happy for you to do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just read it out now. This is from the applicant, Mr. Baldwin. Dear Committee, we would like to put forward our defence regarding your 2 points of concern, which revolves around noise levels. 1. Music levels. We have supplied to Environmental Health photos and explanation of the only background music / ambience we play, which is an Echo Dot device which never exceeds level 5. There is no live music on the premises at all. 2. Extractor fan / ducting noise levels. Again, we have supplied relevant photos and information to Environmental Health, which we know there is no noise output to cause an issue to our neighbours. As stated previously, our neighbours of number 8A, Pauline Elliott, number 8B, Mark, and number 10, Peter, have no issues or objections whatsoever with our plans, and we believe these neighbours are in more of the line of noise than Amy Brooks of number 6A. For the record, directly opposite the Little Coffee House, which is number 33 and 33A Brook Street. This building is a ground floor commercial currently trading as the Turkish Barbers and a large residential flat above. We're the owners of this building, and approximately 4 years ago we submitted plans for a bistro and bar. And if you check your records to clarify this, the plans were passed to trade until 11 p.m. at night. So, with the problematic times we are now experiencing with our plans for the little coffee house, we find it very peculiar why the bistro and bar was passed. We also own other businesses and property in Selby, so we have invested heavily in the town because we believe in Selby, and we also believe in ourselves as respectable business people who are only trying to bring positivity and something we believe is lacking in the area. We feel a one-year trial is fair to all parties concerned, as it will prove within this time that we will not cause a nuisance to the street and our respected neighbours. Thank you for your time. And that's the end of their representation, Chair.
Thank you, Victoria. I now open the debate to members. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. It was regarding what I was going to say earlier on. As far as I'm made aware, the Google Alexas or whatever, they can be tuned or set up to just respond to certain people's voices, because I've got access to one, an Alexa, and it responds to 4 people and completely ignores me. Draw your own conclusions from that. I have the Apple equivalent of what was shown there, the Echo, and whereas they are very, very good for ambient music and background music, mine is capable of making a considerable racket, so they can be noisy. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Well, in the last paragraph, the letter stating sort of a 12-month trial about noise. Now, anyone with past experience of enforcement at Selby District Council, taking aside COVID-19, we have not got the best record in the land for enforcement about many items, Chairman. So I see where Amy Brooks is coming from. Enforcement is virtually nil. I'm not trying to scathe the district council too much, but in past experience, when I've been dealing with other cases, we don't look well. The offer of sort of temporary 12 months license and then seeing if it's working would be great if we could guarantee that it was properly monitored, which I don't think we can, Chairman. And that's just a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other people wanting to speak? Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I echo what Councillor Mackay's just said, to be honest. One thing that does bother me is in the conclusion, the first 2 sentences of both 6.1 and 6.2 cause me some concern. The first one, 6.1, saying the proposed change to the operating hours of an established cafe use undoubtedly has the potential to cause harm to living conditions of neighbouring occupiers, particularly given their proximity, and 6.2, which says the proposed late evening opening does have the potential to create more nuisance. I think that is stating the obvious and actually contradicts what was said earlier in the report, which I may be able to find it with any luck. Oh yes, there we are, at 522, where it was stated that therefore, whilst representations do raise valid concerns, the matter is finely balanced, given permission on a 1-year temporary basis is a reasonable compromise and would not warrant refusal of the planning application. I'm worried, I must admit. I think that the information that we've got does improve on the situation from the last meeting, but I'm not convinced that the amenities of adjacent residents will be protected, and as Don has already said, it will need to be very carefully monitored, and I can't see that happening in a hurry. So I have my concerns, and I'd be interested to see what others have got to say. Thank you.
Councillor Musgrave, have I got your hand up yet?
Thank you, Chair. I noticed my camera had gone off as well, so apologies for that. I don't know why. I have been here all along, I can assure you. Yeah, I would tend to agree with what Bob has just said. This, I wasn't part of the previous debate, so I don't have the background that some of you will have. But this would seem to be a considerable increase in the considerable change to the way that a cafe operates to accommodate nighttime type events. It seems to me that there would be events, sort of one-off type events, and that does risk residential amenity, in my view, and is something that we can control. In fact, we're asked to control through planning. So I share those concerns that Bob has raised. I think there's a fundamental difference between a cafe opening during the day and one that holds evening events. And this is a residential street at the end of the day, and I'm concerned about that impact.
Thank you for that. Is anybody else wanting to speak? I'll just add my comments, if I may. I've listened very carefully to the debate and to what Councillor Packham has said, and to Councillor Welsh and Councillor Musgrave and Councillor Mackay. My feeling is we've got to be clear and positive about that. My view is that we should refuse this application. I think it'd be extremely difficult to control the conditions. Monitoring and enforcement will be difficult. Who's going to monitor and control 11 o'clock at night on a Friday and a Saturday evening? So I think we would have continual problems. This is a residential area. There are more residences there than I understood there was initially. And as I understand it, there are just a main property plus 4 others. There are 5 in total, which is quite a substantial number of people. So my view is that we should refuse this application, primarily on the grounds of detriment to residential amenity, in conflict with policy ENV1 of the Selby District Local Plan and policies SP14 of Selby Core Strategy and recent policy and relevant policy within the NPPF, plus detrimental impact on the conservation area, because I don't think it will maintain or improve. I think it will diminish the conservation area. So that's my view. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Packham, I think, come back to you. Would you like to move a proposal?
I'm happy to support what you've said, Chair. I see Councillor Topping would like to speak, however.
Councillor Topping, sorry if I missed you out.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really difficult application. I agree with elements that Councillor Packham and Councillor Musgrave have highlighted, but I do also think that the measures put in place to protect this, a 12-month sort of assessment period, if you like, and the conditions on limiting sort of decibels, that sort of thing. So I still think my view is that we should support it, or I would support it on the current basis and subject to those conditions. And obviously that would be assessed after 12 months if there is impact on residential immunity.
Anybody else want to speak? Well, I move the proposal that we should refuse it. Is that seconded? That's seconded by Councillor Packham. Councillor Topping, are you moving a recommendation for grant permission?
I am, Chair, yes.
Is that seconded?
Officers.
I don't see.
I'll be happy to second that, Chairman.
You'll second that? Yeah. Okay, so we'll take that. We'll take that first as the amendment. So Councillor Topping is proposing that we grant permission. That's been seconded. We'll take a vote on that. So Councillor Topping, you are
for subject conditions, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
For subject to conditions, Chairman.
Councillor Mackay.
Against, Chairman.
Councillor Musgrave.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Steve Shaw Ryan.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Packham,
Against, Chair.
and I'm also against. So I believe, Victoria, that has failed. So that motion
Yes, Chair, that
has
falls.
failed.
Yeah.
So we now move to the motion of grant permission, which has been proposed and seconded. So I'm in favour of grant. Sorry,
Wrong, Chair. Steady down.
We now move to the other motion of refused permission. I've moved with refused permission. I think that's also seconded by Councillor Packham.
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Topping.
Against refusal, Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
Refusal, Chair.
Councillor Musgrave.
For refusal, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
Refusal, Chair.
Councillor Ellis.
Against refusal, Chair.
Councillor Shaw-Wright.
For refusal, Chair.
I think that's carried as for refusal. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
So that
That's carried.
application has been refused by the committee, and we now need to give reasons for refusal. So, Councillor Packham, would you like to propose any reasons for refusal, please?
I think you're pretty close to the mark with what you said, Sir Chair. I think it really is a matter of residential amenity. I think we have concerns that the proposal, which would extend noise and disturbance late in the evening, would affect residential amenity of adjacent properties, contrary to the policies which you very eloquently quoted and which you can no doubt quote for us again.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. So what I said as reasons for refusal: the detrimental impact on residential amenity in conflict with policy ENV1 of the Selby District Local Plan and policies SP14 of Selby Core Strategy and relevant policies within the NPPF. Second, detrimental impact on the conservation area, failing to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area, conflicting with policies ENV1, ENV25, SP18, SP19 of the core strategy and relevant policies within the NPPF. I think that covers all the areas that you've covered as well, Councillor Packham, if you agree.
I think so, Chair. I just wonder whether I would add to the first refusal reason the fact that the reason for the impact on residential amenity was the increase in hours. And the potential use for parties. So we explain why there's an impact.
So due to the increase in the hours of operation, you can add that to the end, the increase in due to the increase in hours of operation. And what was the last bit about parties?
Oh, just the nature of the use.
And the nature of the use of the establishment.
Yeah.
Could I call on the solicitor to the council? Have we the solicitor with us at the moment?
You have, Chairman, yeah.
Could I ask you if you are happy for those reasons for refusal, contrary to the officer's recommendation?
I'm very content, Chairman. I think that you set it out very well during the course of the debate, and the way that they've just been developed, I think those are perfectly proper, reasonable, lawful reasons for refusal.
So just to confirm, that application has been refused, subject to the reasons given. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. We'll move on to the next item, which is land adjacent to 27 Low Street, Durban in Elmet. And the presenting officer is Elizabeth Moore. And I think this may be her first presentation to committee, although I'm not absolutely sure. So it's over to you, Elizabeth.
Sorry about that, Chair. The microphone was muted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So this site is for 5 new build houses and it's located on Low Street in Sherburn. And to get some idea, the site is. So this is the site outlined in red on Low Street. To get some idea of where the site is, it's right close to the town centre of Sherburn. To the south, you've got the Aldi supermarket. To the north, you've got the town centre. And straight opposite is the Oddfellows Arms Public House. So this is the site highlighted. It was formerly occupied by a detached house and this was demolished in 2013. In terms of the principle, it's a site within one of our local service centres. It's a sustainable location and it's previously developed land and therefore residential development is acceptable in principle. I've just got another site photo there showing you the front of the site and the site access. And here is the site here, which is cleared and it's been vacant for some time. So members may recall this application from the last committee as it was deferred whilst we considered an amended layout. So this application, one of the most contentious issues was an access being created off Orchard Cottages to serve Plot 1. The agent submitted an amended plan which now omits the access off Orchard Cottages and all 5 plots are now proposed to be served off Low Street. And Highways have checked this amended plan and raised no objections. They've also managed to keep 11 parking spaces, which was originally proposed as well. So in terms of other material considerations, such as design and residential amenity, they're all 3-bedroom houses with a good quality housing offer, and the layout doesn't cause any residential amenity issues. In terms of the design, these are well-designed houses that have considered the character of the area. These are the 2 frontage plots, which are quite traditional in their form, and the design reflects the form of houses on Low Street. The 3 houses at the rear are less traditional in their form, being 2.5 stories with dormers, but they have less influence on the street scene because they're set back, but they are similar to other properties in the area as well, such as these, which are just further up on Low Street. So just quickly run through the floor plans. So these are the frontage plots, 3 bedrooms over 2 floors, and these are the rear plots. Over three floors. So one other matter that's cropped up is there's a stone wall that separates the site from Orchard Cottages, and residents would like to see this wall retained. They consider it adds to the historic character of Sherburn. The wall has no statutory protection and we are unaware of who owns the wall, but if it is owned by the developer, we will be seeking to retain it by condition. And then just finally, surface water. So the site is not located within any flood zones, but one of the local residents has highlighted that there is a surface water problem along Low Street, and their concern is that they don't want this development to add to the surface water problems. It's quite a small site, being only for 5 houses, so we don't think it will add to any surface water issues. But also the developer's committed to using all permeable hard standing, and then we've also got a surface water condition on there as well. And the only other thing to say, Chair, is the recommendation is to approve subject to a Section 106 agreement.
Thank you for that. Have we any questions from members to the officer, please? I don't see any question. Can you take the picture off the screen, please?
Yeah, has that now gone, Chair?
No, it hasn't gone. Still on. Thank you. I don't see any questions from members to the officer. So we have one public speaker, Beth Haywood, who's an objector. Oh, sorry, Councillor Packard, you want to speak?
Thanks, Jay. Just a very quick question.
Questions to the officer, yeah?
Thanks, yes. Just a very quick question. It relates to, I think it's condition 5, which relates to the management plan when it's being developed. There's a reference to hours of construction at F, at number F. I just wondered, it's on page 97 of the report, I just wondered if there was any thoughts about what potential hours of construction might be in a location like this.
No, councillor, there's no details of construction hours at the moment. It's something we would take advice from Environmental Health. But if committee members have any suggestions, we'd be happy to take that on board when discharging the condition.
Okay, I just have certain concerns about the proximity to other properties, and that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Packer. No other questions for officers? I don't see any others. So I will go back to, we have one public speaker, Beth Haywood, who's an objector.
She hasn't joined the meeting, Chair. So as before, I have a copy of what she was going to say, if you're happy for me to read that out on her behalf.
Yes, I'm happy for you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My name is Beth Haywood. I live at 27 Low Street, the land adjacent to the proposed site, and I speak to represent both residents of Low Street and Orchard Cottages. Following revision of the plans by Zach Wheatley Developments Limited, so that all vehicle access to the new development is via Low Street, the majority of residents, including those of 27, 23 and 21 Low Street and of 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 12 Orchard Cottages, no longer object to the proposed development scheme. Some of these residents would still prefer it if there were no pedestrian access to Plot 4's back garden via Orchard Cottages, as they feel this may still cause issues with parking if the residents of Plot 4 choose to park on Orchard Cottages. However, it is generally conceded that this is far and away preferable to having vehicle access via Orchard Cottages, and most residents prefer to see their land was put to good use rather than being left redundant. These residents are also pleased to note that the Council's report for the Planning Committee states that the properties will be finished in render or stone, which will help them to blend in better with the existing buildings on Low Street. In contrast to the above, the residents of 5 Orchard Cottages would still prefer if no building works took place on the site at all, and the residents of 25 Low Street are opposed to any residential development of the site at all, as they feel that there are too many densely spaced dwellings in the immediate locality with too few amenities, and would prefer the land to be used for shops or other amenities. All residents of Low Street and Orchard Cottages feel that the stone wall bordering Orchard Cottages should be retained. Although it may not be formally listed, they feel very strongly that it adds character to the area and would actually be an asset to the new properties. Whilst the Council's report for the Planning Committee states that the applicant has no intention to disturb the wall and Zach Wheatley Developments Limited have verbally advised that they do not intend to remove the wall, residents feel that it should be a formal condition of planning that the wall is retained. And that's the end of the representation, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I open the application to members for debate. The application is recommended for grant permission subject to the appropriate 1 and 6 agreement. Councillor Packer.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I do recall in the 2010, 2011, that sort of time, we had some debates about this site, and the issue always was the problem of access from Orchard Cottages, and particularly vehicular access. So I'm pleased to see that that issue has been overcome. I have certain sympathy for residents in terms of development of the site for shops rather than housing, but we have to determine the applications in front of us, and the one in front of us is for housing. I think on that basis, I think the officer's done a good job in addressing all the issues. The materials, the access, the parking were all of concern. So personally, I'm happy that this is a reasonable solution for the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Packer. Any other comments? Any other debate? So the recommendation is for grant permission subject to the 106 arrangements for open space and waste recycling, etc. Are you moving approval of the recommendation, Councillor Packham?
If you're pushing me, I will, Chair. Yes, I'll move it subject to
I'll
the.
move it, Chair. If it's, if it's Councillor Packham happy,
I'll
move
help Bob
it,
out.
Chair.
I'll second it then, Chair, to help Bob out.
Right, Councillor Steve Shawright has proposed it. Councillor Musgrave has seconded it. Thank very much indeed. So we'll now take the vote. I'm in favour of grant permission, subject to the 106 arrangements. Councillor Musgrave.
I'm for, also subject to those 106 arrangements.
Councillor Steve Shawright.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
Move, Chair.
Councillor Packham.
Move, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Ellis.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Topping.
Approved, Chair.
Have I covered everybody, Victoria?
Sorry, Chair. You just need
Chilvers.
Councillor Chilvers.
Or Councillor Chilvers is back with us. Thank you very much indeed. That's clearly carried. So grant permission subject to the 106 arrangements. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the next application, and I believe Councillor Topping is going to be leaving us at this point, but it's Birchwood Lodge, Market Wheaton Road, Balby.
Sorry, Chair. What point would I get called in when I'm ready to say my part?
I'm going to hand over to the solicitor because
That's exactly what will happen, Councillor Topping. I'm sorry, it's slightly convoluted this because it's a virtual meeting, but I think in the interests of good order, yes, if you could check out from this meeting, and then Victoria will invite you in when it is your opportunity to speak in your capacity as a ward councillor.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
so
Chair.
Councillor Topping is leaving the meeting today, full stop. Right, is Councillor Topping gone? Looks like
Yes,
it.
yes, Chair, he has.
So we have the presenting officers, Rebecca Leggett. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just bear with me one moment while I share my screen. Can everyone see that? Just double check.
No.
You can't?
Not yet.
1 second. Try that again. Can anyone see that?
Yes.
I have a blank screen at the moment.
I can see
I still can't see it because I've now got the members of the committee and on board.
Just give it a moment, Rebecca. I think
yeah.
it take a little bit of time, so don't take it back down again.
I've now got a.
You've got it, brilliant.
Placard. Yes.
Right. So, members, I'll run through this in a section, but members might remember we undertook a site visit actually for this in October 2019 for this site. So, it's at Birchwood Lodge on Market Wheaton Road near North Duffield, well, between North Duffield and Baldy. So this particular application has been brought before Planning Committee as the application has been called in by Ward Councillor Arthur due to concerns for the impacts on residential amenity, in summary, on the neighbouring occupiers. So this proposal is for the erection of a new hangar, and this hangar building is for the purpose of storing aircraft, just to make that clear. The application site is located at...
Sorry, Rebecca,
Yep.
could you just repeat that, please?
Yep, so the proposal is for the erection of a new hangar building, and the building is for the purpose of storing aircraft.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just moving on, the application site is located outside the defined development limits of any settlement, and therefore is located within the open countryside. The site is located within flood zone 1 as well. The update sheet provides a summary of the one additional representation received from one of the neighbours. This also, so this sets out the concerns that have been raised. I'll not run through all of those, but essentially relate to views of the building and impacts on residential amenity, etc. The update note also provides a summary of, essentially, we have received a further objection from the IDB since the officer report is written, but it's just to make absolutely clear that actually since receiving that, we have also been able to have those discussions with the IDB and the applicant, and we've resolved that. So essentially, the plans just make absolutely clear that the building will be 3 metres away from the watercourse that the IDB were just a bit worried about. So we've also received a updated comment from the IDB, which raises no objections subject to a condition, which relates to surface water. So providing those details, which is actually already within the report. So it's already in there at condition 6. So there's no additional conditions needed there. The contents of the information provided doesn't change the assessment made either. So if I take you through the slides. So this is the location plan. This includes the access up to the corner of the site where the hangar building will be. This is the aerial view of the site. Yeah, members becoming familiar with the previous site visit. Yep. So this, I've just indicated where the hangar building will be up there, and a more zoomed in shot of that. And this is the layout plan. I know it's very small, but this is the update to it that I was just referring to in terms of for the IDB. It just makes clear here. I know you won't be able to read that, but it essentially just says it's 3 metres. It scales that off just so it's clear. And obviously we'll be conditioning this plan. So this shows the hangar building. And these are the proposed floor plans and elevations. Now this is the view along from the access road and facing east. This is facing north into the site access. And the view north along the area of car parking. I've just tried to use a site layout plan here to just indicate on the site whereabouts these images are being taken. Again, view north from the airstrip. View south towards the neighbouring dwellings from the airstrip. You can see the fencing and the sort of landscaping that they've tried to incorporate there. View south down the access, sorry, view west down the airstrip. So this will be looking away from the side of the site that the hangar building would be. Again, more images of the more built up area of the site. Now this is a view from near to the neighbouring properties facing towards the site. You can see that sort of fencing and landscaping, obviously it being winter when I took these, they look quite bare, but they will be fuller in the summer, sorry. And again, so this image I just wanted to show, when members previously were on site, sorry, apologies. I note not all members will have been there at the time, but just as a little bit of background, this building was what we're looking at the time, and it was just to show in terms of the materials and the style that we've gone for, it would be very similar to this building that we previously looked at in terms of those materials. And this just gives you an idea of how it would look. It almost seems from the highway to be an extension to the fencing. It's from this image, which is zoomed out a little bit more. Appreciate it might be a little bit blurry, but you can see how it blends in and how we've tried to design that in to reduce any impacts on sort of the character and appearance of the area. The hangar building would be located behind that as well. Just going on. Yeah, so just to make clear, this is a proposed hangar building here, and that's the elevations and the layout plan. So section 2 of the report outlines the consultation responses. Section 4 of the report outlines that the principle of the development for the essentially what is the expansion of an existing employment use in the rural area is supported by policy EMP 9 of the Selby District Local Plan. Section 5 of the report then goes to explain that the proposals are acceptable in all aspects. This includes essentially going through the criteria of EMP 9, although not in the same order, through highway safety, impacts on the character and appearance of the area, standards of design and landscaping, and then criteria 4 of EMP 9 just relates to expansion to adjoining land, i.e. agricultural land, which I wouldn't consider is relevant to this application because it doesn't expand onto any adjoining further land. In considering that, the proposals would support an existing and expanding rural business in line with paragraph 84 and 83 of the NPPF, which again, relate to the expansion of all types of businesses in rural areas, and also the recognition of, supporting the business and community needs in rural areas. We've concluded that the proposals are acceptable in section 7 of the report. So, therefore, in considering the above, officers respectfully request that the application is recommended for approval with the conditions outlined in section 7 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions from members to the officer? This is only questions to the officer. Councillor Shaw-Wright.
Yeah, I know what you just said is questions to the officer, but could I just say the way that the report's been presented with the stars where the photographs have been taken from on the site plan is a great help. And if you could show your colleagues how to do that, it would be a great help to everybody, I think. That's my only question, as it were, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions from members to the officer? Can you take your hand down, Steve, please? Thank you. None. So we have 3 public speakers. The first public speaker is Councillor Carl Arthur, who is an objector.
Councillor Chilvers has got his hand up, Chair.
Councillor Chilvers, have you got your hand up? Is it an accident? Yes, Councillor Chilvers, is your hand up or down?
It's up, Mr. Chairman.
Have you got something that you want to ask a question about?
Yes. I was just wondering just wondering if the planning officer knows which aircraft is going in that hangar. Because I know that the applicant bought a Blackburn Beverley
But is it relevant to the building?
Yes, it's a huge aircraft.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if it would fit in there.
It's a hangar.
Yes, but would it fit in there? That's what I'm asking. It's a huge aircraft.
But it's not part of the planning application.
All right, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have we got Councillor Arthur with us yet?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Arthur is in the meeting.
Right.
Are you able to speak, Councillor Arthur?
Can I just remind Councillor Arthur has 5 minutes in which to speak, and off you go, Councillor Carl Arthur.
Not getting out, Vicky.
No, he's in the meeting, and I can see that he's turned his microphone on, but we're not getting any audio at all, are we? Councillor Arthur, do you want to leave the meeting and try and come back in again, and we can ask we could ask either Councillor Topping or the agent, Mr. Foreman, to speak first. Who would you like to speak first, Chair?
Councillor Mark Topping, if he's available.
Yeah, I think Councillor Topping's in the meeting. If he wants to speak first, and then we'll see if Councillor Arthur can re-enter and see if we can get it working. If not, I can read his representation out for him.
So you have 5 minutes, Councillor Topping, to address the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Right. I'm speaking against further development at this site, certainly until existing issues with impact upon residential amenity are resolved to the satisfaction of the applicant and the residents adjacent to the site. I've been involved with this site for over 5 years as former chairman of Cliff Parish Council and as a ward member. In the past, I've supported further development on this site as I believed that the concerns of residents could be mitigated by the use of planning conditions and the enforcement of these conditions in perpetuity if necessary. There has, however, been an ongoing issue which has caused significant concerns for residents who live adjacent to the site. They have experienced on numerous occasions an almost monthly range of issues, concerns and significant impact upon the residential amenity and quality of life as a result of the developments and the ongoing intensification of development on this site. I'm generally very pro-development for the correct application on the correct site, and therefore it is with some significant regret that I feel I now need to stand against further development on this site and against a company who I also want to support and help to help them contribute to the local economy in order to protect residential amenity. I have no issue in principle of development on this site as a well-run, empathetic business is I believe capable of coexisting with residential properties without causing an overbearing impact upon residential amenity. Unfortunately, this is not the case on this site. The ongoing issues raised by the residents are causing them distress, and I believe that their residential amenity is being significantly affected by the development and the recorded breaches of planning conditions which have been set previously by this committee. During a recent investigation by our officers, the breaches were not deemed to impact upon residential amenity. However, such historic issues raised consistently over many years confirm that residential amenity is being breached, in my view, and causing the residents of the adjacent properties distress. Such issues raised included accessing the site prior to hours set by the council on a consistent basis, working in flights at weekends and bank holidays outside of those times set by this council, alongside non-adherence to plans designed to ensure the development is in keeping with the rural nature of the landscape adjacent to this site and others. Such breaches of planning conditions seemingly require the residents to record any breaches on CCTV or video to stand any weight or ability to be enforced, which is not practical nor reasonable in my view. I believe that further development on this site would intensify the issues experienced to date and cannot be successfully controlled and enforced by condition, and therefore further development should not be allowed on this site until a way forward can be found that mitigates the running of an established business and the reasonable amenity that residents should be able to expect within the remit of planning law. I urge this committee to carefully consider whether they believe that after 5 years of ongoing issues on this site between the business and adjacent residents, which is still ongoing, that it is appropriate or reasonable to further develop this site when the conditions previously set out by this committee are not being adhered to in the view of residents, and who are now seemingly responsible for providing video evidence to ensure the conditions are enforced by this council. Therefore, can this committee have the confidence that any conditions placed upon the site and put in place to protect the residential amenity of residents can be enforced by officers? I urge this committee to think carefully about both applications on the site, about the principle of further development when residential amenity cannot be protected by condition set by this council on this site. That's all I wanted to say, Chairman. Thank you very much for your time and for the committee's time, and I shall leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Topping. So back to Victoria. Where do we stand with Councillor Carl Arthur?
Councillor Arthur is back in the meeting. Councillor Arthur, are you able to see if your microphone's working? Are you able to speak? Not getting anything.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can hear you, Councillor Arthur, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start now. Chair and members of the committee, I have asked for this application to be brought before the committee because I am concerned about the adverse impact of the application on the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties through visual and noise pollution. In the appraisal of the application in the report, it states that in paragraph 5.22 that it should be noted that the application relates only to the erection of a new hangar building on the site and does not relate to working hours. Use of the runway or other areas of the site. My concern is that condo products do not appear to have stuck to this working hours restrictions placed upon them by previous application approved by this committee. Residents living nearby have informed me that they start early in the morning, well before the time stipulated by the committee, and late into the evening, well past the time stipulated for ceasing daily activity by this committee. They have also reported to me that the work is being carried out on Sundays and bank holidays, which I believe is forbidden under the approval of previous applications. As a result of this, the likelihood is that this application will have adverse impacts on the neighbouring properties, as there is no guarantee that there will not be noise from the movement of the planes, etc. I'm also concerned about the possible impact on the open countryside of this proposal. I believe it to be contrary to the core strategy policy SP18, which states that any proposal should protect and enhance the environment. I believe that this proposal will also be overdevelopment of the site and therefore contrary to policy ENV1 of the local plan control of development. Another concern that employment is employment opportunities. I know that this application may protect the jobs of 10 people, but it doesn't look like any further employment opportunities will be created, and that therefore this application goes against policy EMP9 of the local plan, which states that there should be an expansion of existing employment use in the rural area. In conclusion, I think that this proposal is contrary to the policies ENV1 control of development and EMP9 expansion of existing employment uses in the rural area of the local plan, and also policy SP18 of the core strategy, which protects and enhances the environment, and that therefore I respectfully ask that the committee goes against the recommendations of the officer and votes to refuse its application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur. You can leave the meeting now, and if you want to watch on YouTube, then that's up to you. Okay, thank you. We now have the agent. Jonathan
yes, he's in the meeting, Chair. Yep, he's present.
Present. So, Jonathan Foreman, if you would like to do your presentation, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good afternoon. This application is for the creation of a new hangar for my client's Successful Engineering and Aviation business, which is based at Birchwood Lodge. The new hangar is to provide valuable additional storage space as the aviation arm of the business expands. The building will be formed using shipping containers as a main structure, with the larch cladding to provide a simple, smart appearance which sits comfortably in the rural surroundings and matches the existing buildings on site. The unit will be created to the northeast corner of the site as indicated on the drawings, located to the north boundary of the property, furthest away from any neighbour or the highway. This avoids any possible concerns of visual amenity as the location is screened from view, as Rebecca has pointed out. The unit is roughly 100 metres away from the nearest neighbour's boundary. We've been asked for some last-minute clarification regarding a land drain to the north of our site. The existing land drain is below ground pipe, set approximately 2 metres below the surface, and we can confirm that the proposed hangar will be positioned at least 3 metres away from this drain to meet the requirements set out by the Drainage Board. We must clarify that there are incorrect statements made in the objections that have been received in relation to this application. Suggestions relating to the housing of historic aircraft and creating a museum or bed and breakfast facility are inaccurate. The proposal is not for this purpose, and the committee should not base any of their decision-making on this incorrect information. The hangar is very simply to provide aircraft storage for the existing aviation business activities. Continuous allegations have been made by residents, but no enforcement action has been taken. It has been found that all allegations are inaccurate and have been disproved. In respect of planning policy, councillors should strongly consider the economic development section of the strategy document, which indicates support should be given to applications which provide local employment, encourage inward investment to the Selby area and promote a diverse local economy. It also states that the establishment and expansion of small local firms should be encouraged. This application is made with the purpose of supporting an existing business to develop and grow, which is vital in these difficult times. These ventures bring the obvious economic benefits to Selby through both local employment and support for other local businesses. On the basis of all these points, we hope that you will look favourably on the proposals and their importance in bringing further economic growth to the area. We hope you can support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Thank you very much. If you leave the meeting, you can watch on YouTube if you wish to.
Chair, just to let you know, Martin has got his hand up to speak.
Martin Granger. Has everybody left the meeting, or the speakers left the meeting?
Yes, yeah, all the speakers have left, Chair.
Right, so Martin Granger wants to speak, did you say?
Yes, Chair.
If you'd allow me to,
hear
Chair.
Martin Granger first then.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to quickly make a point in relation to enforcement, because it was mentioned during the presentations. I just wanted to say that the enforcement issues in relation to the site have been properly investigated. Legal advice has been sought and appropriate decisions have been taken, in my view, in terms of what is expedient and appropriate. So I just off the back of some of the previous comments on enforcement, I just wanted to stress that we have looked at this, we've been to site, we've investigated those issues, legal advice has been sought, and we believe that in terms of looking at the issues appropriate, we've come to a point where we weren't taking further action, we've reached an appropriate position on that, and members clearly need to decide the application in front of them today. Thank you.
Thank you for that point of clarification. We'll now move to the open debate of members on this application. Anybody wishing to speak? The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. I don't see anybody with their hands up. Victoria, is that right?
Councillor Shawwright's just put his hand up just now.
Right. Councillor Shawwright.
Yeah, just to move the recommendation, Chair. Personally, I can't see anything wrong with it. I travel that road almost every week, and I didn't even know it existed in the first place, so it can't be that much of a problem.
Thank you for that. You've moved the recommendation for approval. Is that seconded?
Yes, I'll be prepared to second it, Chairman.
So we've now had a proposer and a seconder for approval of the officer's recommendation for approval subject to the appropriate conditions. There are no other points. I will take a vote on that. So from the chair, I will vote in favour of the officer's recommendations for approval subject to the appropriate conditions. Councillor Ellis. You've voted.
Approved, Chair, subject to the conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw-Wright.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Packham.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Musgrave.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Chilvers.
Approved, Chair, subject to conditions.
Have I got everybody, Victoria? I think so.
Yes,
So
Chair, that's everybody.
Clearly carried for approval as recommended by the officers, subject to the conditions recommended by the officers. Thank you very much indeed. We'll now move to the final item, which is also Birchwood Lodge, and it's again Rebecca Leggett to present to us. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just bear with me one moment while I try and get the presentation back up for you. Again, if I could just double check that members can see that. Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'll wait a little bit again.
Can see now.
You can? Brilliant. Okay. Again, as the chair highlighted, this is for the same site. The second proposal that I'm going to take you through is to the lower corner of the site. Right. So this particular application, again, has been brought before Planning Committee as the application has been called in by Councillor, Ward Councillor Arthur, due to concerns for the impact on residential amenity of the neighbouring occupiers. The proposal is for a proposed new workshop following the demolition of the existing building. Again, apologies, but this application is for a replacement workshop from a workshop that was given a temporary consent by committee in October 2019. That was given a temporary 2-year consent, which has now lapsed, and the applicants have now submitted an application to replace that with the one that I'm going to take you through in a moment. The application site is located outside the defined development limits of any settlement and therefore is located within the open countryside, and the site is located within Flood Zone 1. I'll take you through a couple of the slides and photos. So this is the location plan. Apologies, this is quite small, but you might just be able to make out a small sort of upside down L-shaped building. This was the one that members had previously approved at committee back in 2019. Again, sorry, existing layout, that's a little bit better for you. It's this L-shaped building here that is going to be replaced. And this is the new proposed building. And these are the floor plans and elevations. Again, just to make clear, I know I'd mentioned it within the officer report, but the reason that the previous application was given only a 2-year temporary consent was due to design, essentially because we were looking for something again with a large cladding, as I've shown you with the other building that exists on site. We're looking for something a little bit more in line with that was a bit more sympathetic to the surroundings, wouldn't be too visually intrusive. I note that this is located right within the corner of the site, so it's not really visible anyway. but we were just looking for something a little bit better that would then comply with all the criteria within EMP9. So that was the only reason it was given that 2-year temporary consent, just to give them a bit of time to work on those proposals, but without them having to compromise on how their business was working and growing at the time. So if I continue through the photos again, as I mentioned, it's located right within this corner of the site. And this is, just to point out, this is the garage, like car garage, a few bits and pieces going on there, like washing cars and various things. If I carry on, again, this is a zoomed in version of that. A couple of images from the site. Again, these are located. I didn't want to take you through all the images from towards sort of the hangar end, towards the northern end of the site, as I've just shown you all of those. So I'm focusing mainly on this southern corner here. In terms of the images, you can sort of see the hard standing and the containers that they were using at the time to create these buildings. Again, some more images in here, already with the concrete bases. Some of the works involved as they were working on the previous as well. Yeah. So if I continue then, again, apologies if this is a little bit repetitive, but section 2 of the report outlines the consultation responses. Section 4 of the report outlines the principle of development and that the expansion of existing employment uses in rural areas is supported by EMP9. Furthermore, the principle of development has, to an extent, been established via the previous approval at committee in 2019, bar the impact on design, which I've already explained. I'm not running back through that. Section 5 of the report then goes on to explain that proposals are acceptable in all aspects. In considering that the approved proposals would support an existing rural business, again in line with the relevant paragraphs of the MPPF, which relates to the expansion of all types of businesses in rural areas, and therefore recognition of business and community needs in rural areas. The conclusion is that the proposals are acceptable, and that's concluded in section 7 of the report. The other thing I would just highlight is, in terms of employees for this, we just say it was supporting the 10 employees that were provided jobs through the original building. So it's just that continued employment of those through that. If we were to lose this building completely, obviously that's potentially 10 jobs. But that was the only thing I would probably draw your attention to at that point. Therefore, in considering all of the above, officers respectfully request that the application is recommended for approval with the conditions outlined in section 7 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rebecca. I open it now for questions from members for the officer, if there are any. I don't see any questions from members. Do you agree with that, Victoria?
Yep, I can't see any requests to speak, Chair.
Right, we have 3 public speakers again. The first is Councillor Carl Arthur, who's an objector.
Thanks, Chair. Chair and members of the committee, I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak to you on this application. I've asked for this item to be brought before the committee because I am concerned about the adverse impact of this application on the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties through visual impairment, noise pollutants from the property and sound. In the appraisal of the report, it states that in the paragraph relating to the impact on residential amenity, that it should be noted that the application relates only to a new workshop building on the site and does not relate to working hours, use of the runway or other parts of the site. I'm concerned that this will be used in hours outside that stated in the permissions previously granted by this committee. It has been reported to me by residents that condo products often operate outside these perimeters and have started early in the morning, way before they should, under the terms and conditions of the granted by the committee in previous approved applications, and also late in the evening, well after the hours stipulated in the previous approvals. They have also been reportedly working on Sundays and bank holidays, which I believe is not part of the hours stipulated by the committee. There's no guarantee that this application will not be used outside the hours previously stipulated by the committee. As the neighbouring properties have said in their submissions to the consultation on this application, there is also concern about possible noise disturbance, as well as loss of privacy and the fact that their visual amenity may be adversely affected by the application if approved. This application may also be overdevelopment, as the new building is larger than the one being replaced. This would be contrary to local plan policy ENV1. If this application were to be approved, then, as Cliff Parish Council have said in their consultative submission, there needs to be limited hours placed upon the use of these facilities, which needs to be rigorously enforced, and soundproofing needs to be installed to reduce any noise from the facility, so as to reduce the disturbance to the neighbouring properties. Also, this application will have no extra employment opportunities, so it may be contrary to local plan policy EMP9, which states that there should be an expansion of employment use in the rural area from an application of this type. In conclusion, I would like to state that this application is contrary to both the policies ENV1 and EMP9 of the local plan, and therefore respectfully ask that the committee does not follow the officer recommendation and instead rejects this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur. You may now leave the meeting and watch on YouTube if you wish to. Thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Mark Topping, the ward councillor.
He hasn't rejoined the meeting yet, Chair. So if you want to ask the agent, Mr. Foreman, to speak first, he's in the meeting already.
Right, Mr. Jonathan Foreman, would you like to present your case to the committee?
Good afternoon again, committee. Hopefully it won't take the full length of time, and I'll try not to repeat too much. This application is for the creation of a new permanent workshop for my client's successful engineering and aviation business at Birchwood Lodge. The application is to succeed the approval for a temporary workshop received in October 2019, as recommended by officers and the committee at the time. The building will be formed using shipping containers as the main structure, with large cladding to provide a simple, smart appearance which sits comfortably in the rural surroundings and matches the existing buildings on site. You've seen the drawings already, so that's fairly self-explanatory. The unit will be erected to the southwest corner of the site as indicated on the drawings, following removal of the temporary workshop. The workshop will support continued success of the engineering business by providing a permanent space designed for their specialist activities. To address the concerns raised in the objections received, we should make the following clear. There have been no concerns raised regarding noise from the temporary workshop, and the proposed activities will remain the same within the new permanent workshop, so no issues should arise. Committee members have visited the site previously and have witnessed noise levels themselves, which are not intrusive or detrimental to any neighbour. Highways have commented that they have no objections, and the proposals will not alter the existing arrangements for vehicle movements and access. Residential amenity will not be impacted at all. The proposal is to replace a temporary workshop with one that is better designed, better constructed and better looking. And you can't see it from any of the residential areas of the gardens or any of their spaces. In addition, we've been asked to clarify what will happen to the existing contents and operations from the temporary workshop. And just to confirm, the contents have already been removed to the main workshop to allow for the temporary building to be dismantled and the proposed new workshop to be constructed. In respect of planning policy, councillors should strongly consider the economic development section of the strategy document, which indicates support should be given to applications which provide local employment, encourage inward investment to the Selby area and promote a diverse local economy. It also states that the establishment and expansion of small local firms should be encouraged. This application is made with the purpose of supporting an existing business to develop and grow, which is vital in these difficult times. These ventures bring the obvious economic benefits to Selby through both local employment and support for other local businesses. On the basis of all the points, we hope that you will look favourably on the proposals and their importance to bring further economic growth to the area. I hope you can support the application. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. You can leave the meeting and watch, as I've mentioned before, on YouTube if you wish to.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And that completes all the public speakers. So opening it out to debate.
Sorry,
from-
Chair. Sorry, Chair. Just to say,
topic.
yeah, Councillor Topping, he hasn't rejoined the meeting yet. I have tried to call him in from within the meeting, but he hasn't been able to rejoin. But I have got his representation that I can read out on his behalf, if you're happy with that, Chair.
Yes, read it out, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking against further development at this site, certainly until the existing issues with impact upon residential amenity are resolved to the satisfaction of the applicant and the residents adjacent to the site. I've been involved in this site for over 5 years as former chairman of Cliff Parish Council and as ward member. In the past, I have supported further development on this site as I believe that the concerns of residents could be mitigated by the use of planning conditions and the enforcement of these conditions in perpetuity if necessary. There has, however, been an ongoing issue which has caused significant concerns for the residents who live adjacent to the site. They have experienced on numerous occasions an almost monthly range of issues, concerns and significant impact upon their residential amenity and quality of life as a result of the development and the ongoing intensification of development on this site. I am generally pro-development for the correct application on the correct site, and therefore it is with some significant regret that I feel I now need to stand against further development on this site and against a company who I also want to support and help them to contribute to our local economy in order to protect residential amenity. I have no issue in principle of development on this site. A well-run and empathetic business is, I believe, capable of coexisting with residential properties without causing an overbearing impact upon residential amenity. Unfortunately, this is not the case on this site. The ongoing issues raised by the residents are causing them distress, and I believe that their residential amenity is being significantly affected by the development and the recorded breaches of the planning conditions which have been set previously by this committee. During a recent investigation by our officers, the breaches were not deemed to impact upon residential amenity. However, such historic issues raised consistently over many years confirm that residential amenity is being breached in my view and causing the residents of adjacent properties distress. Such issues raised include accessing the site prior to hours set by this council on a consistent basis, working in flights at weekends and bank holidays outside those times set by the council alongside non-adherence to plans designed to ensure the development is in keeping with the rural nature of the landscape adjacent to the site and others. Such breaches of planning conditions seemingly require the residents to record any breaches on CCTV or video to stand any weight or ability to be enforced, which is not practical nor reasonable in my view. I believe that further development on this site will intensify the issues experienced to date and cannot be successfully controlled and enforced by condition, and therefore further development should not be allowed on this site until a way forward can be found that mitigates the running of an established business and the reasonable amenity that residents should be able to expect within the remit of planning law. I urge this committee to carefully consider whether they believe that after over 5 years of ongoing issues on this site, the business and adjacent residents, which is still ongoing, that it is appropriate or reasonable to further develop this site when the conditions previously set out by this committee are not being adhered to in the view of the residents, and who are now seemingly responsible for providing video evidence to ensure the conditions are enforced by this council. Therefore, please can this committee have the confidence that any conditions placed upon this site and put in place to protect the residential amenity of the residents can be enforced by enforcement officers. I urge this committee to think carefully about both applications on this site, about the principle of further development when residential amenity cannot be protected by conditions set by this council on this site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll open the debate out to members. The recommendation from officers is for approval, subject to conditions. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy with this proposal, and you know, it's all going to the good of the site and to the employment in the area. So I'm quite happy to propose it.
Thank you very much indeed. Is there a seconder? Seconder for approval? Sorry, Steve.
Yes, Chair, I second that.
That's been proposed and seconded. Is there any other comments from members? Anybody wishing to speak? I'll just say briefly, I did attend a site visit some 2 years ago, if I remember right. I will guess about half the committee were probably with us at that time. I certainly remember Keith was with us. Keith Ellis, Councillor Ellis.
Yes, I was there, Chair.
Extremely informative visit. We had a tour all the way around the site.
Very much so.
Everything there. It is a high technology operation, and you know, I would think most of the work that's been done is at cutting edge of engineering, and in this particular application, we were involved some years ago in approving these temporary buildings, etc. So we'll take a vote if there are no other questions or queries. Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, just some comments. Councillors Topping and Councillor Arthur were quite adamant that all the conditions that we'd tried in the past, particularly regarding noise, have been overlooked. Our officer, Mr. Granger, who I honestly have the greatest respect for, seems to think that we are actually doing a good job enforcing noise, etc., etc. Well, I'm afraid not. But the residents up there obviously taking note day by day, camera, etc., etc. And if they're getting all this wretched noise out of hours that we've told them not to work, and no one is enforcing it, what the hell's the point in is putting enforcement hours on? Now, what would perhaps help the new building if we ensured at least it was soundproofed? It's going to be made up of old containers and a roof popped on top. Quite hard to insulate, but it can be done. It can be done. But we seem to be hell-bent on ignoring the residents as if there's no nuisance problem at all. We know it's high-tech, great stuff, but needless to say, there will still be trailing up and down with metal on the forklifts, etc., in and out, lots of cutting going on, grinding, milling, etc. It cannot be done noiselessly. I'm not bothered how good they are. It does want some proper soundproofing, and it would alleviate all these problems. And as regards us putting regulations on, etc., we're absolutely wasting our time because we do not enforce things as verified by the two local councils, Chairman.
Whilst I understand what you're saying, Councillor Mackay, this is not the place for us to determine enforcement proceedings. That's up to the enforcement team. We're dealing with a planning application.
Yes, so Chairman.
Sticking with the planning application,
yes, Chairman,
in front of us.
We could at this point actually soundproof them or improve the soundproofing at this opportunity.
Councillor Martin Granger, you want to speak again?
So if you'd let me, Chair, I just want to be clear about what I said previously, if that's okay. And what I said previously was that the enforcement issues in relation to this site have been properly investigated. Legal advice has been sought in relation to that investigation, and decisions have been made on whether it's expedient or not to enforce. It would be inappropriate for me to go into detail in terms of who's complained and the nature of those complaints and those decisions that have been reached. But what I'm saying to the committee, to say that we've somehow ignored the previous conditions that have been put on, not investigated them properly and not looked at them, I'm saying that isn't correct. I'm saying we have investigated, we have looked at it, we have taken legal advice, and we've reached a decision. So I mean that very respectfully, and I understand the points raised by the councillors, and I don't wish to cut across anybody, but we have been undertaking enforcement investigation. I would also support the point made by yourself, Chair, that you're deciding the application in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the conclusion of any further discussion on enforcement issues. we're dealing with a planning application and only the planning application in front of us. So unless there are proposals with respect to the application itself, Councillor Mackay.
Against it, Chairman.
Is that seconded? I don't see a seconder for that.
That's all right.
So we have an application in front of us by the officers for grant permission. Would I ask
Chair, I'm seconding it.
Sorry, wait. Councillor Walsh, you're seconding what?
Councillor Mackay's proposal.
Right, you're...
Sounds like there's an airplane in the background, John, from where I am.
So we have a proposer and a seconder for refusal. The officer's recommendation is for approval. Is there anyone in favour of approval? Well, I'll move approval. I'll move approval from the chair. Is that seconded?
Chair.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Steve, I didn't.
No, I thought we'd already done it, Chair. I must have been asleep.
Thank you.
We had actually, Chair. I proposed it and Steve seconded it.
Thanks, Keith. I thought I had done.
So, can I just ask the solicitor which came first and which came second?
The first was that proposed by Councillor Ellis and seconded by Councillor Shaw-Wright.
Thank you. That was a motion for approval. So we're going to take the amendment first, which is proposed by Councillor Mackay for a refusal.
That's the correct approach, sir.
Okay. So we'll go around the table. Councillor Packer.
Against refusal, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Against refusal, Chair.
Councillor Musgrave.
Against refusal, Chair.
Councillor Chilvers.
Against refusal.
Councillor Shaw-Wright.
Against refusal, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
For refusal.
And I'm against refusal. So I think refusal, against refusal has carried, yeah? That's lost.
Yeah.
Victoria?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
Right, we're going to take the vote now in favour of approval as recommended by the officers, subject to the recommendation. So for approval of the application, Councillor Backham.
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor Ellis.
For approval, subject to conditions.
Councillor Steve Shaw-Wright.
For, Chair.
Councillor Welsh.
Against.
Councillor Chilvers.
For approval.
Councillor Musgrave.
For approval, Chair.
And from the chair, I'm for approval, and I believe that is carried.
Yes, Chair, that's carried.
So that's been carried in accordance with the officer's recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions as recommended. What's next on the agenda? Is that the end?
That is, Chair. You've made it to the end.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah,
First of all, I'd like to thank all the committee today for attending and for dealing with these applications. It's been quite a long agenda compared with recent meetings. So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, John.